Okay, so Microsoft is doing a little bit of a kind of retrospective with Bloomberg because it's the 20th anniversary of the original Xbox. And they just kind of started recalling some stuff in their past, like, oh, before we created the Xbox, we tried to buy Nintendo.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. And what's not really weird about it, but humorous about it, is that they went, because Steve Ballmer's like, go have a meeting with those Nintendo guys. Let's see if they'll sell to us.
Yeah, I hope you know Japanese.
Exactly. These representatives, go over there. And they say, first they tried to buy EA. And EA was like, yeah, we're going to pass. But thanks so much for the offer. It's very kind and everything. Cool. So then they're like, Steve Ballmer's like, go talk to Nintendo.
Yeah.
So they go to Nintendo, and they just laughed him out of the building.
That's what he says.
Yeah, literally the quote is like, imagine an hour of somebody just laughing at you. That's the kind of way
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
But tell him some of the things he said, though, because here's what's interesting. Looking at this story and some of the things that he said to Nintendo is not worried about. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that he was saying, I think one of the quotes that he said was, let's see.
Are you talking about the second time that they met?
Whenever he said, like, you guys are good at games, but let us do the other side, the other part.
Yeah. So they went to go buy EA. Yeah, he said no. They went to Nintendo. Nintendo literally laughed them out of the room.
It's crazy.
And then some time passed, and then Microsoft basically approached them again. It's like, okay, cool. So you don't want to sell. Let's have like some kind of joint venture, because essentially, you guys are getting destroyed by the Sony PlayStation from a hardware standpoint. Like, you can't compete.
Right.
But you guys are really good at the gaming front. So it's like, how about
let me ask you this. What year is this conversation?
2000. January
that's crazy.
2000.
And so when you think of 2000, just to put it in perspective where we're at the end of the life cycle of the N64 is where we are in the year 2000.
Okay.
The GameCube hasn't come out yet. But the 64... remember, had GoldenEye on it. Like 64 was bananas, and here they come saying like, you're getting trounced hardware wise, and Nintendo's like, we ain't worried about hardware, baby. We do
Right.
and commence the laughing again.
I mean, yeah. So they really like pitched. Essentially, what they wanted to do was they wanted to make what the specs were for the original Xbox. They wanted to partner and build that for Nintendo, and then let Nintendo do all the Nintendo stuff on the software side. And it doesn't say that there was quite as much laughing, but still, as we know,
But there was laughter.
It ended up just kind of being like nah, we good kind of thing. And I just thought that was super interesting, because you got to think, when Microsoft introduced the Xbox, I think a lot of people were kind of taken back, and they're like, this isn't going to work. And then obviously it's done really well for itself over the years.
Yes, of course.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it absolutely worked. But I could see them, just like Sony did, because they didn't want to create a console. They wanted to partner with Nintendo, and they wanted to build something. And then, obviously because of the way that the deal kind of like last minute, Nintendo kind of pulled out in a way. And then Sony just kind of had a vendetta and made their own brand and went their direction. It was kind of reminiscent, a similar situation, except for the fact that I think that they were already kind of planning on Xbox. We're like, but if we can get this Nintendo deal to go through, we ain't got to do our thing on our own. And then when it didn't go through, they already had all the specs for it and the ideas and the plans. So it's just like, all right, cool. And then they just had to figure out the software side. But still, that was really interesting. I had not ever heard that they were potentially trying to purchase Nintendo. So I thought that was really cool when stuff like this gets brought to light.
Well, it's hard too when it's just a story like this and it doesn't go anywhere, right?
Right.
Me and Jenny have been in love with a series of shows on Netflix called Blank That Made Us. So there's like the movies that made us, the toys that made us, the Christmas movies that made us. There's these little documentaries about how Die Hard was made, how Home Alone was made, the story behind the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the story behind My Little Pony and Barbie. They're amazing little 45-minute things. And what me and Jenny, kept saying was, man, perseverance. That's crazy. Perseverance. Because, things like Dirty Dancing, if they didn't, I think they said they got rejected by like 45 studios. It was like some crazy number where it's like every studio was like, no. And then finally like this VHS, company was like, we'll put up the money for it, kind of thing. You know, it wasn't like it wasn't like 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
And so we talked about perseverance. But then we talked about like, but how do you know that you have something good when so many people have told you no?
Yeah.
Because then perseverance turns into annoyance, right?
Right.
And so how many stories are out there where somebody had an idea like this, like Microsoft and Nintendo, let's team up. We're Microsoft, you're Nintendo, let's do it. And they're like,
Yep.
no. and then they don't do it and it goes away. This isn't like it made its way down the lane and they made the concept thing, which we know is the Nintendo PlayStation, and and we don't have any our hands on it. It's just a story. And so me and Jitty have talked about like how many stories are out there of the thing that never got made and didn't get famous. It's easy to tell the story now of Home Alone that like barely happened, lost a studio, got a studio while they were shooting. And so I'm with you, Chris, because I love these stories, knowing that it was even a conversation. And knowing that Microsoft, it says when they went back, they said the pitch was their hardware stunk. And compared to the Sony PlayStation, it did. So the idea was, listen, you're much better at the game portion of Mario and all that stuff. Why don't you let us take care of the hardware? You come in with a disc? Hey, listen, your hardware sucks. Let us just do that and you just do the games. Like, and they're like, okay, yeah, but we're about to do the GameCube and the Nintendo Wii. Like, and the Wii is going to come out to be one of the best-selling
about to
consoles
change all that
in history.
Yep, right. We are about to change all that.
But it's the same thing. Like, it just depends on what you're looking at. And I think that was definitely the problem in the early 2000s, was everybody was so concerned about graphics that we have things that push graphic boundaries, but were awful games. Where Nintendo was like, we don't need to push the graphics, make amazing time, games that just last over time that people love forever.
Right.